Welcome to a story that waits in the spaces between waking and dreaming. A tale not of grand declarations, but of vows whispered on rain-slicked cobblestones, of a mercy that arrives not with a shout, but with the soft rustle of feathers in the dark. Tonight, we drift into the perpetual twilight of Yharnam, a city that has forgotten the shape of the moon to follow the faint trail of a solitary figure. We will walk with Eileen the Crow, a hunter of hunters, and explore the silent covenant she keeps, a duty born not of glory, but of a profound and weary sorrow. This is a quiet vigil, a long and contemplative narrative to carry you into rest. Imagine, if you will, the scent of cold stone and old blood hanging thick in the air, a metallic perfume that has seeped into the very brickwork of this place, a constant reminder of the revelry and the ruin that defines its streets. Listen to the distant, forlorn chiming of a church bell, a sound that seems to come from no particular direction, but rather emanates from the city itself, a mournful heartbeat in the fog-shrouded night. It is here, in these liminal hours when the beasts stir and the madmen pray to things best left unnamed, that our story truly begins, not with a beginning at all, but with a continuation, a thread in a tapestry woven from nightmare and necessity. To understand the figure of Eileen, one must first comprehend the ground upon which she walks, and the unique, terrible office she holds. In Yharnam, the hunt is a sacrament, a violent purge enacted under the cover of night, a collective fever dream where the citizens bar their doors and the chosen few walk out into the chaos, their weapons gleaming with a purpose granted by the healing church. They are hunters of beasts, and for a time this seems a clear, almost righteous path. But the blood, the exquisite, intoxicating blood that is the source of all healing and all power in this city, carries with it a subtle poison. It is a draught that promises strength but demands sanity as its price, and few are strong enough to pay it for long. A hunter, in the throes of the hunt, can become drunk on it, the scent, the spray, the visceral thrill of the kill. This euphoria is a siren's call, a descent into a state where the distinction between hunter and prey begins to blur, where the beast they seek to slay starts to look back at them from the reflective surface of a puddle of blood, or from the depths of their own shadow. This is the blood drunkenness, the final, fatal corruption of the hunter's calling. And it is from this corruption that the covenant of the hunter of hunters was born. It is not an institution, not a title granted by any church or council. It is a secret, a solitary oath taken by one who has seen the abyss and resolved to stand at its edge, to prevent others from falling in. The hunter of hunters is a purger, a cleaner of the already stained, a final mercy for those who have lost their way so completely that they have become a greater threat than the beasts they once hunted. Their duty is to stalk the stalkers, to hunt the hunters, to perform a euthanasia of the soul for those whose minds have been irrevocably claimed by the very violence they were meant to wield. It is a role that demands a profound understanding of the hunt's allure and an even more profound strength to resist it. One must walk the same razor's edge, feel the same intoxicating pull, yet remain forever sober, forever vigilant, a sentinel in the storm. The weight of this oath is not measured in the number of kills, but in the solitude it imposes. There can be no comradeship, no shared purpose with those who do not understand this grim necessity. Every other hunter is a potential target, a future failure. The hunter of hunters stands alone, a monument to a terrible, necessary truth in a city built on beautiful lies. And into this role steps Eileen, her form clad in feathers that seem to drink the light, her voice a low, gravelly whisper that carries the cadence of distant lands. She is an outsider, a fact immediately apparent in the curl of her words, an accent that does not belong to the guttural, feverish tones of Yharnam. Her speech is measured, thoughtful, each word chosen with a care that suggests a mind untouched by the local mania, a consciousness that operates on a different, slower frequency. Her garb, too, speaks of elsewhere. It is not the formal, brass-buttoned regalia of the church hunters, nor the practical leathers of the common vigilante. It is the hunter crowfeather garb, a attire woven from the very essence of her purpose. One can imagine her in a life before the dream, before the blood, a woman from a place where the sky was clear and the nights were silent. What drove such a person to this cursed city, this stone labyrinth weeping with pestilence and old gods? Was it a thirst for knowledge, a pilgrim's curiosity drawn to the rumors of miracles worked by Yharnam's blood? Or was it something darker, more personal? A loss, perhaps, that sent her searching for a cure that could not be found in her homeland, leading her to this place where death is postponed, but never truly cheated. Perhaps she came seeking healing, only to find a different kind of sickness, one that required a different kind of medicine. The specifics are lost to the fog, as all pasts eventually are in Yharnam, but the conviction that settled upon her is clear as glass. She saw the cycle, the hunt, the drunkenness, the fall, and she recognized it for the unsustainable horror that it is. She saw that the beasts were a symptom, but the blood-drunken hunter was the disease. And so she took up the mantle. Not for glory, for there is none to be found in this work. Not for gratitude, for those she saves never know her, and those she ends curse her with their final breath. She took it up out of a weary, profound sense of duty, a personal conviction that someone must hold the line, must perform this silent, bloody triage, lest the entire hunt consume itself in an orgy of self-destruction. Her resolve is not the fiery passion of a zealot, but the cold, hard certainty of a stone worn smooth by a relentless river. It is a resolve born of understanding the cost and accepting it nonetheless. The tools of her trade are an extension of this philosophy, each piece a statement of intent, a narrative written in steel and feather. Consider first her weapon, the blade of mercy. It is not a massive cleaver, not a whirring saw, not a weapon designed for the brutal dismemberment of large beasts. It is a twin set of short, elegant, sickle-shaped blades that can be wielded separately or combined into a single, deadly instrument. Its design speaks of intimacy, of precision. It is a weapon for close quarters, for a fight that is less a battle and more an execution. To use it effectively, One must be inches from the target, must see the whites of their eyes, must feel the final exhalation of breath. There is no anonymity in this kill, no safe distance from which to launch an attack. It is a personal weapon, demanding that the wielder confront the humanity or the lost humanity of the one they are about to end. The blade itself is said to be a relic of the first hunter of hunters, and it is imbued with a strange, arcane property. It grows in strength and speed with the very aggression of its wielder. In the hands of a blood-drunk hunter, it would be a terrifying instrument of frenzy. But in Eileen's calm, disciplined grasp, it is a scalpel. Her combat style is a dance, a series of fluid, economical movements. She does not overpower. She outmaneuvers. She does not trade blows. She evades and retaliates with swift, surgical strikes. It is a style that emphasizes ending the conflict quickly, with minimal suffering, a final grace note in a life that has descended into a cacophony of violence. And then there is her attire. The hunter crowfeather garb is a masterpiece of Soma symbolism. The feathers are not those of a glorious eagle or a noble hawk, but of a crow, a scavenger, an omen, a creature associated with death and the liminal spaces between worlds. The garb is dark, a deep, non-reflective black that allows her to blend into the shadows, to become one with the darkness from which she delivers her judgment. It is not armor designed to deflect heavy blows. Its protection is in its silence, in the way it muffles sound and breaks up her outline. She is a phantom, a wisp of darkness given purpose. The tattered cape of feathers flows behind her not as a banner, but as a shroud. Together, her weapon and her garb paint a complete picture. She is death, but a specific kind of death. She is the quiet end that comes not as a terrifying monster, but as a familiar shadow, a release from a torment that has become too great to bear. Her tools are the instruments of a silent mercy, and she is its weary, unwavering hand. Our first glimpse of her is not in some grand cathedral or ancient tomb, but on a mundane, overlooked terrace in central Yharnam, a place accessible only by a rickety ladder, a secret within the secrets of this plagued city. She is perched there, a silhouette against the ever-present fog, as still as the stone itself. Her initial greeting is not one of warmth, but of wary assessment. Are you hunting the beasts? Then may the good blood guide your way. The words are a traditional blessing, but in her voice they sound like a warning, a reminder of the path's perils. She marks you as an unknown quantity, a new player in the old, tragic game. She offers guidance, a hint about the sewers, but her primary mission is stated with a grim clarity. She is there for another hunter, one who has succumbed to the blood. She is already on the hunt, her purpose separate from yours, a parallel track of grim duty. The next meeting is a shift, a deepening of the connection. In the cathedral ward, after the fall of the vicar, she appears near a tomb, her posture less guarded, her tone touched with a note of not quite camaraderie, but a shared professional respect. She speaks of the healing church, of the maddest of them all lurking in the tomb of Edon. Here, she is not just a solitary hunter. She is a repository of knowledge, a guide through the deeper, more insane layers of Yharnam's nightmare. She warns you of the dangers ahead, but there is a sense that she is also testing you, gauging your resilience, your sanity. The encounter that truly defines the nature of her work, however, takes place in the dim, overgrown arena of Edon Tomb. Here, the hunt becomes a shared burden. You arrive to find her locked in a desperate, clashing dance with another hunter, an old man named Henrik, clad in the faded yellow garb of the old hunters. This is not a beast. This is a man, a former comrade, now lost to a grief so profound it has curdled into a feral bloodlust. The air crackles with the sparks of their sore cleavers. The scene is one of profound tragedy. Eileen is not hunting a monster. She is putting down a broken soul. And when you intervene, when you fight alongside her, the dynamic changes. For a few fleeting moments, she is not alone. The fight is brutal, visceral, a symphony of steel and desperation. When it is over and Henrik lies still, Eileen stands over him, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Her words are heavy with a sorrow that transcends this single death. He was a hunter a long time ago. She does not celebrate the victory. She mourns the necessity. She warns you of the dream of Jayaman, her words laced with a pity that suggests she knows the trap you are in. And then she gives you a gesture, the shake-off cape move. It is a dismissive, almost contemptuous flick of the wrist, a gesture for shaking off the blood and the filth of the hunt. In this context from her, it feels like a piece of hard-won wisdom. It is an instruction. Do not let the hunt cling to you. Do not let it become who you are. This shared victory, this moment of connection, is the peak of your relationship with her. It is the calm before the storm that will break her, and in breaking her, reveal the ultimate, heartbreaking cost of the silent mercy she has chosen to dispense. The silence that settles in the wake of Henrik's passing is a thick, woolen thing, muffling even the ever-present drip of water, and the distant, guttural moans that drift through the tomb's stone archways. It is a silence Eileen seems to wear like a second cloak, a weight that bows her shoulders ever so slightly as she stands over the fallen hunter. The fight's frantic energy dissipates, leaving behind only the cold, hard reality of the act. She does not immediately sheath her blades. Instead, she holds one out, watching the thick, dark blood slide down the curved steel in viscous rivulets, each drop a punctuation mark in the story of a life ended by her hand. The light in this sunless place catches the liquid, making it gleam like a malevolent jewel before it falls to the mossy stone with a soft, final patter. Her breath, which had been coming in sharp, controlled gusts, slowly evens out into a long, weary sigh that seems to carry the accumulated exhaustion of 100 such nights. This is the aftermath, the part of the ritual that is never spoken of, the quiet accounting of the soul that must be done after the steel has fallen. She turns to you then, and in the deep shadows cast by her feathered garb, her eyes are pools of ancient fatigue. They are not the wild, gleaming eyes of a beast, nor the fervent, zealous eyes of a church hunter. They are the eyes of a physician who has just performed a necessary, terrible amputation, seeing not an enemy vanquished, but a sickness halted. He was a hunter a long time ago, she says, and the words are not an epitaph, but a diagnosis. In that simple statement lies an entire history of camaraderie lost, of shared watches under the same false moon, of a mutual understanding that has now been irrevocably severed by the very thing that once bound them. She is speaking of Henrik, yes, but she is also speaking of every hunter who has ever taken up the mantle. She is speaking of a potential future, a path that leads into a darkness from which there is no return, and her voice is a low, gravelly guidepost warning of the precipice. When she speaks of the dream, of the old man who resides within it, her tone shifts into something softer, yet infinitely more sorrowful. It is a pity that has been aged in the cask of long experience, a profound sadness for the trap you have unknowingly stepped into. She does not elaborate on its mechanics, on the cosmic puppetry at play. She speaks of it as a state of being, a gilded cage whose door you have not yet realized is locked. "What's done is done," she murmurs, a phrase that resonates with the finality of a tomb door sealing shut. It is an acceptance of fate, both his and yours, a recognition that the wheels of this tragedy have been set in motion and cannot be reversed, only endured. Then comes the gesture. Her hand flicks outward, a sharp, dismissive motion that sends a few stray droplets of Henrik's blood spattering against a nearby tomb. The shake-off cape. It is an instruction carved from the bedrock of her hard-won wisdom. In that single, fluid movement is contained the entire philosophy of her survival. It is a physical manifestation of a mental discipline, a ritual of purification. Do not let the blood settle. Do not let the violence soak into your skin, into your spirit. Do not savor the metallic tang on the air or the visceral thrill of a perfectly executed dodge, or the way a body feels when it goes limp under your blade. These sensations are the hooks, the very instruments of the blood drunkenness that claims so many. To shake off the cape is to consciously reject the seduction of the hunt, to remind oneself that this is a duty, not a delight. A burden, not a birthright. It is a lesson she offers not as a master to a student, but as one survivor to another, a fragile piece of kindling passed in a vast and freezing darkness. She watches you mimic the gesture, and for a fleeting instant, something akin to approval, or perhaps just a shared, grim understanding, flickers in the depths of her weary gaze. Then she is gone, melting back into the shadows of the tomb with a rustle of feathers, leaving you alone with the corpse and the silence, the weight of her warning and the ghost of her gesture hanging in the damp, chill air. The city, in the moments that follow, seems different. The fog that clings to the spires and bridges of Yharnam is no longer just an atmospheric nuisance. It feels like a shroud over a vast, sleeping illness. The groans of the beasts take on a new dimension. They are not just the mindless noises of monsters, but the agonized exhalations of failed hunters, of souls who could not, or would not, shake off the cape. Every narrow, cobbled street feels like a potential stage for the same tragedy that just unfolded in the tomb. The knowledge Eileen has imparted rewrites the city's geography, turning familiar corners into sites of future falls, and every distant, echoing footstep into a potential threat not from a beast, but from a former ally. This is the true contagion of Yharnam, the one the blood merely carries, the spiritual plague of despair and madness that transforms protectors into predators. Eileen's presence, even in her absence, becomes a benchmark of sanity, a lone, steady flame in a world increasingly dedicated to its own immolation. Time, in the dream-haunted reality of the hunt, is a slippery, inconsistent thing. It could be hours, or it could be days, before the threads of your path and Eileen's cross once more. The encounter does not happen in some grand, foreshadowed location, but in a place of profound transition, a bridge that connects the more terrestrial horrors of the cathedral ward to the soaring, impossible architecture of the grand cathedral. This bridge is a liminal space in its purest form, a narrow stone pathway suspended over a chasm of swirling, gray nothingness, the wind howling with a voiceless lament as it whips through the stonework. And it is here that you find her again, but the Eileen you find is a shattered echo of the woman from the tomb. She is slumped against the cold stone of the bridge's railing, her form crumpled and broken. The elegant, deadly grace that defined her is gone, replaced by the limp vulnerability of a wounded animal. The dark feathers of her garb are matted and clumped, soaked through with a blood that is unmistakably her own. It seeps from a vicious wound in her abdomen, a deep, ugly gash that speaks of a terrible, piercing blow. Each ragged, wet breath she takes is a monumental effort, a shudder that runs through her entire body. The blade of mercy lies on the stone beside her, its twin blades smeared with gore, but it rests there inert, a tool that has finally failed its master. The scent of blood here is different. It is not the stale, coppery smell of old battles, but the sharp, alarming, living scent of a current, mortal injury. The atmosphere on the bridge is charged with a terrible intimacy. This is not a public death, not a warrior's fall in the heat of battle. This is a private, quiet ending, witnessed only by the uncaring fog and the mournful wind. As you approach, her head lifts slowly, with immense effort. The mask of her crowbeak helmet turns toward you, and from within its darkness, her voice emerges, thinned by pain and loss of blood, but still carrying that core of gritty resolve. A hunter is a hunter, even in a dream. She whispers, the words a ragged echo of her earlier wisdom. But then she continues, and the confession that follows is a blade to the heart. But I'm afraid I've made a bit of a mess of things. The understatement is so profound, it is almost poetic. This woman, this paragon of control and precision, this silent arbiter of mercy, has been bested. The hunter she came to dispatch, the one she warned you was the maddest of them all, has proven too far gone, too powerful, too consumed by his own terrible enlightenment. The failure is not just a professional one, it is a personal, philosophical collapse. The sentinel at the edge of the abyss has been pulled over the brink. Her next words are a plea, but not for her own life. That she seems to have already accepted is forfeit. He's in the grand cathedral. He's the real hunter, the most foul, and now he's mine. The ownership in that last phrase is devastating. He is her responsibility, her failure, her burden to bear even in her dying moments. And then she entrusts this, her final and most terrible duty, to you. Could you please finish what I started? The request is not a command. It is a supplication, the passing of a torch that has burned her hands to the bone. It is the ultimate acknowledgement of your capability and the ultimate burden. To agree is to step fully into the cycle she has dedicated her life to. To accept that the line between hunter and hunted is forever blurred. And that the only constant in Yharnam is the necessity of making the hard, bloody choice. The wind moans across the bridge, a lonely chorus for this quiet transfer of a terrible covenant, as the last of Eileen's strength ebbs away, leaving her a broken, breathing monument to the cost of her silent, feather-clad mercy. The blood pooling beneath her is a dark, spreading stain on the weathered stone, its edges slowly creeping into the intricate cracks and fissures of the bridge. Each labored inhalation is a wet, rattling sound, a bellows struggling to find air in a collapsing forge. You kneel, the cold of the stone seeping through your clothes, and the proximity to her failing body is an intimate violation of the distance she always maintained. You can see the fine details of her crow feather garb now, the way individual feathers are layered like scales, how some are tipped with a faint, almost iridescent sheen of oil-slick gray, now dulled and clumped with gore. The metallic scent of her blood is layered over with something else, something older and more pungent, the smell of the grand cathedral itself, of incense turned to dust, and a profound, chilling emptiness. Her gloved hand, resting on her wounded abdomen, tremors with a faint, constant vibration, a current of pain she can no longer fully suppress. Her helmeted head lolls slightly, the beak pointing toward the churning abyss below. "He saw through me," she whispers, and the words are barely audible, stolen by the wind. He saw the hesitation, the pity. This confession is more devastating than the physical wound. It speaks to a crack in her flawless resolve, a moment of human empathy that, in the world of the hunt, is a fatal flaw. The madman in the cathedral, this foul hunter, did not defeat her with superior strength or speed alone. He defeated her by reflecting her own humanity back at her, by forcing her to see the person he once was in the monster he had become. And in that split second of recognition, her blade faltered. He spoke. "Of the cosmos," she continues, her voice a thread of sound. "Of eyes on the inside. He said my mercy was a small, blind thing in a universe that sees everything and cares for nothing. The philosophical horror of this is immense. Her entire purpose, her silent covenant, was built on the premise that mercy had meaning, that ending a life to prevent greater suffering was a moral act. He confronted her with a cosmos so vast and indifferent that such concepts are rendered meaningless, a nihilistic vista where her vigil is nothing but the scuttling of an insect in the dark. He didn't just break her body, he attacked the very foundation of her soul. You do not speak. There are no words of comfort that would not be a mockery in this place, on this bridge suspended between worlds. Instead, you place a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of contact, of acknowledgement. The feathers are surprisingly soft beneath the stiff, blood-caked exterior. She flinches at the touch, not in pain, but in surprise, as if she had forgotten what it felt like to be touched without the intent to harm. A long, shuddering sigh escapes her. The dream, it was a comfort once, she murmurs, her mind drifting through memories you cannot see. A quiet place to rest the blade, but even the dream is part of the trap. It makes you think you can start over, that the blood can be washed away. It cannot. This is her final, distilled wisdom. The hunter's dream, with its gentle, perpetual twilight and its calming dawn, is not a sanctuary, but a mechanism. It allows the hunter to continue, to be reforged after death, but it never cleanses the spiritual stain. It perpetuates the cycle, making the hunter a permanent part of the endless, bloody night. Her failure to shake off the cape in the end was not a momentary lapse, but an inevitable accumulation. The blood had soaked in over decades of lonely work until the weight of it finally anchored her here, on this bridge, unable to rise. You look from her broken form toward the far end of the bridge, where the immense, ornate doors of the grand cathedral stand partially ajar. From within, a strange, cold light spills out, a light that does not illuminate so much as it reveals a deeper kind of darkness. It is the color of old bone and tarnished silver, and it seems to pulse with a slow, rhythmic cadence like a sleeping heart. The wind that blows from that direction carries a new scent, ozone, the electric tang of a gathering storm, and beneath it, the cloying sweetness of rotting lilies. This is the lair of the one who broke her, the final quarry in her long, grim career. The air around the cathedral seems thicker, resistant, as if the very fabric of reality is strained by what resides within. You can feel a pressure building behind your eyes, a faint, psychic static that is the precursor to a revelation best left unseen. Eileen's breathing grows shallower, the pauses between each breath lengthening into terrifying silences. With a final, immense effort, she pushes something toward you with the toe of her boot. It is a small, leather-bound pouch, simple and unadorned. The Crow Hunter badge. It is not gleaming metal. It is dull, worn smooth from a lifetime of handling. To pick it up is to feel the ghost of her touch, the weight of every decision she ever made. It is a key, a symbol, and a sentence. It will grant you access to her tools, to the legacy of her covenant, but in accepting it, you are accepting the mantle. You are agreeing to become the new sentinel at the edge of the abyss, to take up the blade of mercy and the feathered shroud, to walk the razor's path between salvation and damnation, forever alone. She gives one last, soft exhalation, a wordless release of a life defined by grim purpose. The tension leaves her body, and she becomes still, a sculpture of sorrow and feathers against the cold stone. The wind seems to still for a moment in respect, or perhaps in indifference. The only sound is the distant, forlorn chiming of a bell, the same one that has haunted the city all along, now sounding a knell for this specific, quiet tragedy. You are left there on the bridge with the badge in your hand and the cathedral waiting. The choice is made. The hunt continues, but its nature has changed irrevocably. It is no longer about survival or even about cleansing the streets of beasts. It is about honoring a promise whispered in blood, about confronting the madness that can break even the strongest will, and about understanding that the most terrifying monsters are not those that howl in the dark, but those who once whispered words of mercy before they forgot what the words meant. The grand cathedral doors loom, an open mouth leading into a deeper layer of the nightmare. And from within, a faint, mad laughter seems to echo, not loud, but pervasive. A sound that coils insidiously in the mind, an invitation to a dance from which there may be no return. The journey across the remainder of the bridge feels like wading through a substance thicker than air, a viscous medium of grief and impending revelation. Each step is a conscious act of will, a physical pushing against the psychic weight emanating from the grand cathedral. The wind, now that Eileen has fallen silent, regains its voice, but it is a changed voice. It no longer moans with a generic sorrow. It seems to whisper her name, to carry the faint, ghostly rustle of crow feathers, a sound that will now forever be the auditory signature of her absence. The stone underfoot is uneven, worn smooth by centuries of rain and forgotten pilgrimages, and your own footsteps echo with a hollow, lonely sound, a stark contrast to the silent grace with which she always moved. You find yourself automatically mimicking the shake-off cape gesture, a futile attempt to dispel the clinging sense of finality. But the weight of the badge in your pocket is a constant, sobering counterweight. It is not just an object. It is a condensation of her entire life, a dense core of duty and despair that now resides against your body, its presence as palpable as a second heartbeat. The doors of the grand cathedral are not merely ajar, they are wounded. The magnificent, weathered wood, carved with scenes of communions and blessings that now seem like grotesque parodies, is splintered around the massive iron handle, as if they were burst open from within by an explosive force of will rather than physical strength. The gap between them is a sliver of ominous promise, a vertical slit of that strange, cold light that seems to devour the warmer tones of the world. As you draw closer, the scent of ozone and rotting lilies intensifies, coalescing into a single, nauseating perfume that speaks of corrupted sanctity, of rituals performed not to honor the divine, but to dissect it. The psychic static behind your eyes intensifies, resolving into a faint, high-pitched hum, the sound of a mind being slowly stretched beyond its natural limits. Placing a hand on the cold, grooved surface of the door, you feel a vibration, a deep, subsonic thrumming that travels up your arm and settles in your teeth. It is the resonance of the thing inside, the madman who quoted the cosmos, whose very existence warps the space around him. Pushing the door open is like breaking a seal on a tomb that has held its breath for 1,000 years. The interior of the grand cathedral is a cavernous void, a volume of space so vast it seems to defy the external architecture. The ceiling is lost in a gloom that the strange, sourceless light cannot penetrate, suggesting an infinite ascent into nothingness. The air is frigid and still, a perfect preservation of silence, yet it presses in on all sides with a physical force. The light itself emanates from no candle or lantern. It seems to be a property of the air, a luminescent fog that hangs in the middle distance, illuminating the center of the cathedral while leaving the peripheral pillars and alcoves in deep, concealing shadow. It is the color of a long-dead star, a bone-white silver that reveals everything in stark, merciless detail, while somehow leaching all warmth and life from what it touches. And in the center of it all, standing upon the circular insignia inlaid into the floor, is the hunter. He is not a hulking brute, not a twisted monstrosity. He is a man, tall and gaunt, clad in the white and gold garb of the healing church, but it is stained, torn, and altered. Over it he wears a black, tattered cloak that seems to be woven from solidified shadow, and upon his head is a bandage, wrapped tightly around his eyes, from which dark, viscous fluid has seeped and dried in rivulets down his cheeks. This is Father Gascoigne, or what remains of him, but also something far more. This is the culmination of his blood drunkenness, a state beyond mere beastly frenzy. He has become a vessel for a deeper, more cosmic understanding, a knowledge that has not enlightened him, but hollowed him out. He does not pace or roar. He stands perfectly still, his head tilted as if listening to a symphony played on frequencies only he can perceive. In one hand, he holds a massive, weathered axe, its blade resting on the floor. In the other, a primitive firearm, a blunderbuss. They are not just tools, they are extensions of his nihilistic philosophy, the axe to cleave, the gun to scatter, both instruments of ultimate, indifferent violence. He speaks, and his voice is not a shout, but a calm, resonant whisper that fills the immense space without effort, as if the cathedral itself is his vocal cords. Ah, another little puppet. The words are devoid of malice, filled instead with a weary, cosmic contempt. Have you come to continue the old woman's quaint vigil, to dispense her small, blind mercies? He takes a slow, deliberate step forward, his movements unnervingly fluid, like a spider testing the threads of its web. She thought she understood the hunt. She thought it was a cycle of sin and salvation, how provincial. He gestures vaguely with the axe, a casual, dismissive motion. The hunt is not a cycle. It is a filter, a process of refinement. The blood washes away the weak, the sentimental, those who cling to notions of meaning. It leaves only those who are strong enough to gaze into the abyss and recognize it for what it is, a truth. He begins to circle you, not with the aggressive intent of a predator, but with the detached curiosity of a scholar examining a rare insect. She hesitated. Did she tell you? She looked at me, and for a moment she saw the man I was. She saw a colleague, a fellow hunter. And in that moment, her conviction, her entire world of necessary evils and silent mercies, crumbled to dust. Because she realized that from a high enough vantage, there is no difference between the mercy killer and the madman. We are all simply expressions of the same cosmic will, instruments playing our assigned notes in a song of endless, meaningless transformation. His words are a poison, an insidious logic that seeks to unravel the very purpose that brought you here. He is not trying to enrage you. He is trying to enlighten you to his despair, to recruit you not to his side, but to his point of view, the view from the precipice. The blood, he continues, his bandaged gaze seeming to pierce right through you, is not a curse. It is a revelation. It is the medium through which the great ones, the true inhabitants of the cosmos, communicate. They are not gods to be worshipped. They are forces, vast and indifferent, and they are beckoning. They grant eyes to those who are willing to see. He taps a finger against his bandaged forehead to see the insides of things, to see the architecture of reality laid bare. Your crow-feathered friend, she feared those eyes. She wanted to keep the world small, manageable, defined by her little human morals. But the universe is not small. It is vast and cold and beautiful in its utter lack of concern for you, for me, for her. With a sudden, shocking speed that belies his previous languor, he moves. The axe is no longer resting on the floor, but whistling through the air in a brutal, horizontal arc meant to cleave you in two. The transition from philosopher to executioner is instantaneous. There is no rage in his attack, only a chilling efficiency. This is the practical application of his philosophy, the removal of an obstacle, a pointless speck in a pointless universe. The dance begins, but it is a dance unlike any other. Eileen's was a ballet of precision and grace. This is a whirlwind of obliteration. His movements are unpredictable, a fusion of practiced hunter technique and something else, something jerky and alien, as if his body is being operated by a consciousness that is no longer entirely terrestrial. He mixes sweeping, powerful axe swings with point-blank blunderbuss blasts that stagger and shred, a relentless assault that gives no quarter and expects none. The fight is not just a physical trial. It is a philosophical argument conducted with steel and gunpowder. Every dodge, every parry is a rebuttal to his cosmic nihilism. Every time you land a blow, it is an affirmation that Eileen's mercy, however small, however blind he deemed it, had meaning. That the choice to care, to take up a burden for the sake of others, is what separates a person from a force of nature. The air crackles with more than just the energy of combat. It thrums with the clashing of two irreconcilable worldviews. He fights to prove that nothing matters. You fight to prove that one woman's sacrifice, her lifetime of weary sorrow, mattered. The cold, bone-white light of the cathedral seems to pulse in time with the conflict, the very stones absorbing the echoes of your clash, recording this silent, violent debate for whatever indifferent ears might be listening in the vastness above. He is terrifyingly strong, his power augmented by the insights festering behind his bandaged eyes. His attacks are infused with a pale, arcane energy that bites with a cold deeper than any Yharnam frost. But there is a flaw in his perfection, a crack in his cosmic armor. It is the same thing that gave Eileen her moment of hesitation, the ghost of the man he used to be. In the midst of his most fluid, alien movements, there is sometimes a faint, almost imperceptible stumble. A fragment of a human rhythm trying to reassert itself before being crushed by the overwhelming weight of his enlightenment. It is in these fleeting moments, these echoes of a lost humanity, that an opening appears. It is not a weakness of skill, but a weakness of essence. The last, struggling vestige of Father Gascoigne, the protector of Yharnam, crying out from within the hollowed shell of the madman who now wears his face. And it is toward this faint, dying ember that the blade of mercy, now in your hand, must be directed, not to kill a monster, but to grant a final, true release to the man who is already long gone, to perform the last act of Eileen's covenant upon the very one who broke her. The blade of mercy feels different in your grasp now, no longer a tool of a distant, abstract duty, but an extension of a specific, heart-breaking promise. The weight of it is the weight of Eileen's final, rattling breath, the cool of the grip the same temperature as her hand in its last moments. As you circle the madman, the twin sickles seem to hum with a quiet, focused intent, their curved edges catching the cathedral's copse light not with a gleam, but with a dull, thirsty absorption. Each step you take on the vast, cold floor is a careful placement, a testing of the ground upon which she fell. The silence in the wake of his monologue is more profound than any noise, a vacuum that seems to pull at the very substance of your thoughts, threatening to unravel your resolve with the sheer, oppressive weight of his indifferent cosmos. He does not wait for you to find your center. He flows into motion again, a study in contradictions. His movements are both brutally efficient and eerily languid, as if he is fighting in a dream, or perhaps as if you are the dream he is attempting to dispel. The axe, a tool of pure, uncomplicated destruction, sweeps toward you not with rage, but with a kind of dispassionate geometry, calculating the most efficient angle to bisect your form. You pivot the feathered cloak you now wear, her cloak, whispering against the still air, the sound a ghost of her presence at your back. The dodge is not merely an evasion, it is a statement. It is a refusal to be erased, a declaration that this specific, individual existence and the promise it carries has a value his cosmic perspective cannot quantify. The axe head screams past, missing by inches, and the wind of its passage carries the scent of old blood and that strange, sweet ozone, the exhalation of a mind that has touched the void. Your counterattack is a series of swift, precise strikes, the blade of mercy a silver blur seeking the gaps in his church-white armor. The steel connects not with a solid thud, but with a series of sharp, wet sounds like ripe fruit falling onto stone. He barely flinches, A dark, thick fluid wells from the cuts, a blood that seems too dark, too viscous, as if it is already half congealed with the knowledge it carries. He does not cry out in pain. Instead, he lets out a low, thoughtful hum, as if you have just presented him with a mildly interesting data point. You cling to her purpose, he observes, his voice still that calm, resonant whisper, even as he follows the axe swing with a blast from the blunderbuss that fills the air with shrieking pellets. You wear her feathers. Do you think they grant you her conviction? Her conviction was a fragile thing, a candle flame in a hurricane. I simply showed her the scale of the storm. He is trying to unmake you with words, to do to you what he did to her, to expose the smallness of your cause against the backdrop of infinity. But where Eileen faced this alone, you carry her with you. The memory of her broken form on the bridge is a shield against his nihilism. Her failure is not a proof of his point, but a testament to the cost of the fight. You press the attack, your movements becoming a mirror of her own remembered grace, a dancer's steps in a hall of horrors. You are not as fluid as she was, not as instinctively economical, but you have the fire of a newfound, terrible purpose. You slide under a sweeping axe blow, the rusted edge passing so close it parts the feathers on your shoulder, and you drive your blade upward into his side, feeling it grate against a rib. This time he stumbles. It is a minute shift, a fractional break in his perfect alien rhythm. For a split second, his head tilts, the bandaged eyes seeming to look inward, and a different sound escapes his lips. Not a hum of analysis, but a sharp, guttural gasp that is entirely, achingly human. It is the ghost of Father Gascoigne, the protector of the city, the man who once had a family, a home, a reason to fight that was rooted in love, not in cold, cosmic revelation. In that fleeting moment, you do not see a madman or a vessel for great ones. You see a man drowning in an ocean of knowledge, his head briefly breaking the surface, gasping for air of a simpler, more meaningful world. It is the opening. It is the hesitation Eileen saw, the crack in the monolith. And it is your duty, your inherited burden to exploit it. You do not hesitate. There is no room for his pity here, not in this place that has consumed so much. As he regains his balance, the alien intelligence reasserting its control, you move with a final, desperate surge of speed. The world narrows to the space between you, to the arc of your blades, to the bandaged face that hides eyes that see too much and a heart that has forgotten how to feel. You feint high, and as his axe rises to parry a blow that never comes, you drop low, spinning on the ball of your foot, the blade of mercy extended. The sickles find their mark, not in armor, but in the vulnerable flesh of his leg, severing tendons with a sickening, precise tear. He cries out, a sound that is finally, blessedly, a roar of pure animal pain. The axe falls from his grasp, clattering against the stone floor with a sound that echoes like a falling bell. He collapses to one knee, his body shuddering. The cosmic aura around him wavers, the bone-white light flickering for an instant. And in that instant, the cathedral feels just like a building again, a vast, empty, desecrated church. He clutches at his leg, the intellectual madman replaced by a wounded, cornered beast. The blunderbuss lifts, his hand trembling, but the shot is wild, spraying harmlessly into the distant shadows. This is the moment. This is the culmination of Eileen's life, her final, unspoken lesson. The mercy is not in the fight, but in the ending. It is not an act of anger or of vengeance, but of release. You step forward, the weight of the crow hunter badge a heavy truth in your pocket. He looks up, his bandaged face a mask of confusion and fading defiance. The whisper that leaves him is barely audible. I see them, the stars. They are so. Cold, you do not answer. You bring the blade of mercy together, the twin sickles locking into a single, longer blade. There is no flourish, no unnecessary movement. It is a simple, functional motion. You place the point over his heart, where a man's heart would be, beneath the stained robes of the healing church. You meet what you imagine is his gaze behind the soiled bandages, and you push. There is resistance, then a sudden, soft give. His body stiffens, a final, full-body tremor passing through him, and then he slumps forward, his weight falling against you before sliding to the floor. The strange, cold light that filled the cathedral gutters and dies, plunging the space into a deep, natural gloom, broken only by the faint, dusty light filtering from the high, stained glass windows. The oppressive psychic pressure vanishes, leaving behind a ringing silence that is somehow more absolute than any that came before. The scent of ozone and lilies fades, replaced by the old, familiar smells of dust, stone, and blood. He lies at your feet, a still, silent form. The madness has departed, leaving only the shell of a man. The hunt is over. You have finished what she started. You have upheld the covenant. But as you look down at your work, at the final, bloody act of the silent mercy, you feel no triumph, no satisfaction. Only a hollow, echoing fatigue that seems to seep into your very bones. You have walked in Eileen's footsteps, and you have learned the true cost of the path. It is not the fear, or the danger, or the violence. It is the silence that comes after. The profound, unanswerable silence of a duty fulfilled, a promise kept, in a world that remains vast, cold, and utterly indifferent. You stand in the darkness of the grand cathedral, the new hunter of hunters, alone with the consequences of a mercy that feels less like a blessing and more like a sentence. The silence in the grand cathedral is not a mere absence of sound, but a presence in itself, a heavy, velvet drapery that falls upon the world, muffling even the frantic beating of your own heart. It is a silence that has weight and texture, a substance you must push through as you stand over the fallen form of the man who was once Father Gascoigne. The body is already cooling, the last vestiges of that terrible, enlightened heat dissipating into the chill air, leaving behind only the inert flesh and the stained, once sacred vestments. The dark, unnatural blood that seeped from his wounds has already begun to thicken and congeal, its metallic scent now mingling with the older, more profound odor of the cathedral itself, the smell of abandoned faith, of stone that has heard too many prayers go unanswered, of dust that has settled over hopes as yet unformed. You find yourself staring at the bandages wrapped around his eyes, wondering what lies beneath. What terrible, star-filled vistas those eyes witnessed before he chose to blind himself to the world he sought to unmake. Was it an act of penance, or merely the next logical step in his ascent, removing the crude, biological lenses to better see with the mind's eye? The blade of mercy feels heavy in your hand, the steel seeming to have absorbed the final, shuddering tremor of his life. You separate the twin sickles, and the soft click of the mechanism disengaging is obscenely loud in the stillness. Wiping the blades clean on a less soiled part of your new feathered cloak is a ritual, an echo of Eileen's own fastidiousness, a necessary act of maintenance in a world where your tools are your only constant companions. The dark smears on the dark feathers are invisible, but you feel them nonetheless. A fresh layer of grime added to the countless layers already accumulated over a lifetime of her vigil. As you sheathe the blades, your fingers brush against the leather pouch in your pocket, the Crow Hunter badge. It is no longer just an object. It is a covenant sealed in blood, a contract signed with two deaths, the death of the maker and the death of her final quarry. To touch, it is to feel the ghost of her hand guiding yours, a final, faint pressure from beyond the veil of the dream. The walk back through the cathedral is a journey through a landscape forever altered. The vast space feels less like a place of worship and more like a mausoleum for a particular kind of hope. The hope that understanding the cosmos would bring peace rather than despair. The pillars rise like the ribs of a long-dead leviathan, and the faint light from the windows seems tired, exhausted from its long vigil over the proceedings. Your footsteps, which once echoed with such hollow loneliness, now seem to be absorbed by the silence, as if the cathedral is finally, fully satisfied, its hunger for drama and tragedy sated for now. Pushing open the heavy doors feels like exiting a tomb, and the gust of wind that meets you on the bridge is a shock, a return to a world that is still moving, still breathing, however labored those breaths may be. The body of Eileen the Crow is still there, a dark, crumpled shape against the pale stone of the bridge railing. The wind has teased a few loose feathers from her garb, sending them skittering in tiny, frantic circles across the ground, like lost thoughts. The pool of her blood has darkened, its edges defined, a permanent stain on the transient world. To see her now, after having fulfilled her last request, is to see her with new eyes. She is not just a fallen warrior. She is a completed story. Her arc, from the wary sentinel on the terrace to the broken sage on the bridge, is now a whole and terrible thing. The duty that defined her has been passed on, the torch snatched from her failing grasp before it could be extinguished entirely. There is a grim symmetry to it. Her life ended in the very act of ensuring her purpose would continue. Kneeling beside her once more, the finality of it all presses down upon you. The city of Yharnam continues its slow, bloody rotation around you, its countless other tragedies playing out in the fog-shrouded streets below. But here, on this bridge, there is a strange, localized peace. The conflict is resolved. The chapter is closed. You consider moving her body, giving her a more dignified rest than this cold, exposed causeway, but something stops you. It feels wrong, a violation of the image she so carefully cultivated. She was a creature of the in-between spaces, the rooftops, the forgotten ledges, the shadows. This bridge, suspended between the terrestrial horror of the ward and the cosmic horror of the cathedral, is a fitting enough final perch. The wind will be her dirge, the fog her shroud. She belongs to the liminal spaces, even in death. You become aware, then, of a subtle change in the air, a presence familiar and yet profoundly alien. The scent of flowers, of damp earth and clean linen, begins to gently overwrite the sense of blood and ozone. The world around the edges of your vision softens. The hard lines of the stone bridge and the swirling gray abyss beginning to blur and melt like wax under a gentle flame. The hunter's dream is calling. It is the inevitable return, the reset button of your existence. But this time, the thought of that quiet, twilight garden with its patient doll and its sleeping Jayaman brings no sense of respite. It brings only the chilling echo of Eileen's final warning. It makes you think you can start over, that the blood can be washed away. It cannot. The transition is not a jolt, but a slow, seamless fading. The groans of Yharnam recede into a distant, muffled hum. The cold stone beneath your knees becomes the soft, perpetually damp grass of the dream. The oppressive, blood-scented air is replaced by the gentle, floral fragrance that hangs amidst the ancient, slumbering headstones. You are kneeling now not on a bridge, but in the garden before the stone doll who is, and is not, a doll. The shift is disorienting, a psychic whiplash. The visceral, immediate memory of blood and steel and final words clashes violently with the serene, unchanging tranquility of this place. The doll's head tilts, her porcelain features expressing their eternal, gentle concern. "Welcome home, good hunter," she says, her voice a balm on the raw nerves of your soul. But the words feel hollow, a script written for a different person, a hunter who has not yet learned the true cost of the dream. You stand, your body feeling strangely light, unburdened by the physical exhaustion that should be there. The wounds from the battle are gone, the tears in the crow feather garb mended as if they never were. This is the dream's great lie, its most insidious deception. It restores the body perfectly, erasing all evidence of struggle, of pain, of mortality. But it cannot touch the soul. The memory of Eileen's weight against the railing, the feel of the blade of mercy sinking into Gascoigne's flesh, the crushing weight of the silence in the cathedral. These are etched into you with a permanence that no dream can wash away. The blood, as she said, has soaked in. You can still smell it, a phantom scent beneath the flowers. You can still feel the sticky warmth on your hands, though they are now clean. You find yourself walking, not toward the workshop to fortify your weapons with the blood echoes you have surely reaped, but toward the edge of the dream, where the land falls away into a soft, featureless white void. Jayaman sleeps fitfully in his wheelchair, mumbling names and places lost to time, a prisoner of the very cycle he helped create. From this vantage point, you look out not at a world, but at the concept of one, a hazy, indistinct memory of Yharnam. And you understand, with a clarity that is both terrible and absolute, what Eileen meant. The dream is not a refuge. It is a mechanism in a larger, crueler machine. It allows the hunter to persist, to be endlessly reforged, to continue the hunt long after a normal person would have broken. It turns you into a permanent instrument, a tool that is sharpened and reused, its edge maintained, but its fundamental nature worn down with every cycle. The comfort it offers is the comfort of the grindstone to the blade, a necessary process for continued function, but one that inevitably wears away at the substance. You are the hunter of hunters now. The badge in your pocket is your proof, your title, your curse. You look down at the feathered garb you wear, and it no longer feels like a costume or an inheritance. It feels like your skin. You have stepped into the solitude she warned you about. Every other hunter you meet from this moment forward will be a potential subject of your grim duty. Every flicker of blood drunkenness in a fellow hunter's eyes will be a call to action. Every moment of camaraderie will be shadowed by the knowledge that it could be you who must end it. The loneliness of this path is not merely physical, it is existential. It is the loneliness of holding a terrible truth that others cannot or will not see. It is the loneliness of being the sober one at a festival of madness, the one who must turn out the lights when the party is over. The doll has followed you, her movements silent on the soft grass. She stands a few paces away, her hands folded, her head slightly bowed. She does not speak, but her presence is a question. She is here to facilitate, to channel the blood echoes, to be a passive listener to the hunter's unvoiced troubles. But the trouble you carry now is one she cannot possibly understand. She is part of the dream, part of the beautiful, tranquil lie. How can you explain the taste of cosmic nihilism or the weight of a mercy that feels like a sin to a being whose purpose is defined by gentle service? You look from her placid face to the sleeping form of Jayaman, the first hunter, the one who built the cage and then willingly stepped inside. Did he, too, once have a Eileen in his life? Did he, too, understand the cost of the hunt on a level that transcended the mere slaying of beasts? The history of this place is a palimpsest, layer upon layer of tragedy written over and erased, only for the same story to be written again in a slightly different hand. A faint chime echoes through the dream, a sound not from the wakening world, but from the dream itself. The messengers, those small, pale denizens of the nexus, are stirring at your feet, their tiny hands reaching up. They are drawn to the blood echoes, to the power you have gathered. But they are also drawn to the badge, to the symbol of your new office. They recognize the authority of the hunter of hunters, their simple, devoted minds understanding the chain of command in a way that complex human minds often fail to. Their silent adoration is a small, cold comfort, You turn your back on the void and look toward the workshop. The lamps are lit, beckoning you to return to the practicalities of the hunt, to upgrade, to prepare, to continue. The night is still young, and Yharnam has countless more secrets to vomit forth, countless more horrors to unveil. There are other hunters out there, right now, walking their own paths toward damnation. Some will become beasts. Some will become like Gascoigne, seeing too much and caring too little. And it will be your duty to find them, to judge them, to offer them the silent, feather-clad mercy. The path is clear, stretching out before you into an endless, fog-shrouded night. It is a path of solitude, of sorrow, of a weary, profound duty that offers no thanks and promises no rest. You take a step forward, then another, the crow feathers rustling softly with a sound that is now, and forever, your own. The hunt continues, but the hunter has been forever changed. You are no longer just hunting beasts. You are hunting the reflection of a failure you must never, ever become. The first step back into the workshop feels like walking into a stranger's home. The familiar sense of old wood, oil, and cold forge are still there, but they are layered now with the phantom aroma of Eileen's world, the cold stone, the metallic blood, the faint, wild scent of the feathers themselves, as if a crow had just taken flight from the rafters. The messengers skitter around your feet. Their silent, waving forms a stark contrast to the profound, echoing silence within you. They offer you the familiar tools, the blood gem workshop, the storage chest, the ritual altar. These are the mechanics of the hunt, the cogs and wheels of the endless night. But as your fingers brush over the cold, polished wood of the weapon bench, you do not see a mere place of maintenance. You see an altar for the curation of violence, a site where instruments of death are honed to a finer and finer edge, each improvement a step deeper into the dependency, the addiction that the hunt demands. You lay the blade of mercy upon the bench. In the soft, golden light of the dream, the steel looks less like a weapon and more like a relic. The curved edges seem to hold the memory of every life they have ever ended, a lineage of mercy and failure that stretches back to its unknown first wielder. The messengers bring forth the blood echoes you collected from the cathedral, a swirling, sanguine energy that feels different from any you have handled before. These echoes are not just the raw life force of beasts. They are tinged with the cold, star-dusted intellect of the madman and the weary, resigned sorrow of the hunter who fell to him. To invest these echoes into the blade feels like a sacrilege, a contamination of Eileen's purpose with the very essence of what destroyed her. Yet it is also a necessity. The weapon must be sharp. The sentinel must be armed. As the echoes flow into the steel, the metal seems to drink them thirstily, the surface shimmering for a moment with a light that is both silver and deep violet, a visual echo of the grand cathedral's unnatural glow. The blade is stronger now, its edge keener, its dance potentially more lethal. But the strength feels tainted, a power bought with a currency of despair. The doll is watching you from her place near the headstones, her expression as unreadable as ever. You approach her not for solace, but because it is the next step in the ritual. The blood echoes must be channeled, the strength must be made manifest in your own flesh. She reaches out her hands, and as your own meet them, the process begins. It is a cold, impersonal transaction, a flood of vital energy that sinks into your bones, tightening sinew and sharpening perception. You feel the hunter's physique becoming more resilient, your reflexes honed to a razor's edge. But with each surge of power, the phantom sensations of the night intensify. The cold of the bridge railing seems to seep into your palms. The jarring impact of Gascoigne's axe against your guard reverberates anew in your joints. The doll's touch is meant to be a conduit for transcendence, but it feels more like a needle, stitching the memories of the trauma directly into the fabric of your being. She looks into your eyes, and for a fleeting, impossible second, you imagine you see a flicker of something beyond programmed sympathy, a glimpse of an understanding so vast and lonely it mirrors your own. But it is gone as soon as it appears, leaving only the serene porcelain mask. "Is there something you need?" she asks, her voice a gentle constant in the whispering dream. You have no answer for her. What you need is something this place cannot provide. Absolution, or perhaps just the certainty that the path you now walk leads somewhere other than a cold bridge and a pool of your own blood. You find yourself drawn to the empty, open space beside the workshop, a place where Jayaman, in his prime, might have practiced his own deadly art. Here, you begin to move. You are not testing the newly fortified blade of mercy. You are learning it. You are trying to replicate the fluid, economical grace that was Eileen's signature. At first, your movements are clumsy, a brutish imitation. You swing with too much force, your footwork is heavy, your transitions between the twin blades and the combined form are hesitant and noisy. You are a brawler trying to perform a sonnet. But slowly, as you push through the frustration, something shifts. It is not a conscious learning, but a somatic remembering, as if the feathers of the garb itself are guiding your limbs, whispering the old, deadly patterns into your muscles. Your movements become lighter, more precise. The sickles become extensions of your intent, whirling in tight, lethal arcs, their passage through the air a soft, whispering sigh rather than a violent tear. You slide, pivot, and strike at an imaginary foe, and for a single, perfect moment, you are not yourself. You are a silhouette against a foggy sky, a whisper of motion in a dark alley, a promise of a quiet end. And in that moment, you understand the profound discipline this weapon requires. It is not a tool for unleashing fury. It is a tool for imposing calm, for enforcing a terrible peace. The dance is one of control, of maintaining a perfect, internal stillness even as your body becomes a vortex of cutting steel. It is the physical manifestation of shaking off the cape. Exhausted, you finally stop, your breath pluming in the cool, perpetual air of the dream. The phantom sensations have not faded, but they have been joined by this new, muscle-deep knowledge. You are not Eileen. You can never be her. Your journey, your failures, Your reasons for being here are your own, but you can carry her purpose. You can wear her feathers and strive for her grace. You can remember the cost. Looking down at your hands, you half expect to see them stained, but they are clean. The dream has seen to that. It is a cleanliness that feels like a lie, a pristine surface over a foundation of gauze. A new sound intrudes upon the dream's tranquility, faint at first, then growing steadily. The resonant, mournful chime of a bell, but unlike any you have heard in Yharnam. This is not the distant, generic tolling of a church bell. It is sharper, more personal, a sound that seems to vibrate in the space just behind your eyes. It is the beckoning bell. Another hunter, somewhere in the waking world, is calling for aid. In your previous life, such a sound might have sparked a sense of camaraderie, a chance to stand shoulder to shoulder with another soul against the darkness. Now, the sound is laden with a new and terrible ambiguity. The hunter on the other end of that chime, are they a fellow warrior against the night, or are they the very subject of your new duty? Are they fighting a beast, or are they, in the heat of the struggle, beginning to taste the intoxicating draught of blood drunkenness? Their laughter a little too shrill, their movements a little too frenzied. The bell does not distinguish. It is a cry for help, but it is also a potential summons to an execution. The ethical calculus of it is paralyzing. To answer the bell is to step back into the chaos, to potentially aid a hunter who may, in the next moment, become your quarry. To ignore it is to forsake the possibility of genuine aid, to potentially abandon someone who is still fighting the good fight, who has not yet succumbed. This is the solitude Eileen spoke of. This is the constant, gnawing doubt that now accompanies every interaction. There are no allies, only temporary compatriots on a road that inevitably forks, leading either to the grave or to the madness that necessitates a grave. The bell continues to chime, a persistent, questioning note hanging in the floral-scented air. It is a test of your new resolve, the first of countless such decisions that will now define your nights. You make your choice. It is not made from a place of certainty, but from a place of grim necessity. The path of the hunter of hunters is not one of preemptive judgment, but of vigilant observation. You must walk among them to know them. You must see the hunt through their eyes to recognize the moment their vision starts to blur. You reach out, your fingers touching the resonant, spectral surface of the bell's answer. The world of the dream once again softens, its colors bleeding together, its solid forms becoming insubstantial. You are being pulled not to a specific location, but to a point of need, a nexus of another hunter's struggle. The last thing you see before the dream dissolves entirely is the doll, standing motionless amidst the headstones, her back to you, a silent monument to the endless, repeating cycle. Then you are elsewhere. The transition is a violent wrench, the serene quiet of the dream replaced by the immediate, visceral cacophony of a Yharnam back alley. The scent of rot and stagnant water fills your nostrils. The wailing of a nearby mob of townsfolk grates against your ears, and the beckoning bell's chime is replaced by the sharp, desperate ring of steel against steel. You materialize in a haze of spectral light, your form coalescing from the dream stuff into solidity. The scene is one of familiar, desperate violence. The hunter who called you, a figure clad in the standard Yharnam hunter set, their face obscured by a hat and scarf, is backed against a brick wall, fending off a large, snarling church servant, its monstrous form wielding a giant, flaming axe. The hunter is skilled, their dodges timely, their attacks precise, but they are tiring, their movements becoming slightly more ragged, their breathing a sharp gasp you can hear even over the din. For now, they are clean. There is no wildness in their eyes, only the focused intensity of survival. You join the fray without a word, your newly honed blade of mercy flashing in the dim alleyway. Your entrance is a whirlwind of quiet efficiency. You do not draw the beast's rage. You simply end its threat, your strikes aimed at tendons and vital points, bringing the hulking creature down with a series of swift, final cuts. It collapses with a guttural sigh, the flame on its axe sputtering and dying. The other hunter stares at you, their chest heaving. Their eyes, visible through the gap in their headwear, are wide, first with relief, then with a dawning curiosity and a hint of awe as they take in your appearance. The crowfeather garb is not a common sight. It marks you as something other, something outside the known hierarchies of the hunt. "I thank you," they manage, their voice young, perhaps too young for this nightmare. "I didn't think anyone would come." "That was incredible. Your weapon, I've never seen anything like it." They look at you as a savior, a mysterious benefactor. They see the feathers and assume a legend. They do not see the burden, the history, the blood-soaked covenant. They do not see the part of you that is already analyzing the pitch of their voice for hints of hysteria, the sharpness of their movements for the telltale twitch of bloodlust, the focus in their gaze for the first cracks of madness. Your silence seems to unnerve them. They take a step back, their gratitude cooling into wariness. "Well, may the good blood guide your way," they say, repeating the old blessing, a piece of scripted civility in an uncivil world. You simply nod, the beak of your own helmet dipping slightly. You offer no blessing in return. There is no good blood. There is only blood and what it does to those who spill it. You watch as they turn and hurry down the alley, disappearing into the fog, another fragile candle flame in the hurricane. You stand alone in the aftermath, the body of the beast at your feet, already beginning to dissolve into the ectoplasmic mist that passes for death in this city. The encounter was a success. A hunter was saved. A beast was slain. But you feel no satisfaction, only the heavy, familiar weight of the watchfulness that now defines you. The hunt continues, an endless twilight vigil where every act of salvation is also an act of scrutiny, and every moment of connection is shadowed by the knowledge of its potential end. The night is deep, and you have only just begun to walk its length. The young hunter's hurried footsteps faded into the enveloping fog, their shape swallowed by the gray, as if the city itself had drawn a curtain between you, reasserting the solitude that was now your native state. The silence they left behind was different from the profound, echoing stillness of the grand cathedral. This was a smaller, more intimate quiet, broken by the drip of water from a rusty pipe and the slow, sizzling dissolution of the church servant's corpse. The ectoplasmic mist coiled around your boots, feeling strangely cold, insubstantial, a ghost of a life that had already been a perversion. You stood for a long moment, not in triumph, but in assessment, your senses stretched taut, listening not for the groans of beasts, but for the subtler sounds, the rhythm of a retreating heartbeat, the cadence of a breath that might yet hitch with the first tremors of euphoria. You were no longer just a participant in the hunt. You were its auditor, its silent corrector, and every rescued soul was a new entry in a ledger you would be forced to balance one day. The alleyway was a canyon of crumbling brick and rotting wood, the walls leaning inward as if burdened by the secrets they kept. High above, a narrow strip of the false, starless sky was visible, a ribbon of bruised purple and perpetual twilight. The air here was thick with the smell of damp rot and the coppery tang of old blood. But beneath it, you could detect the lingering scent of the young hunter, a hint of gunpowder, the oil they used on their saw cleaver, and the faint, sweet smell of fierce sweat. These were the smells of a novice, of someone still clean, still fighting for their life rather than reveling in the taking of it. For now, you committed the scent to memory, a baseline against which to measure any future corruption. This, too, was part of the duty, the creation of a living catalogue of hunters, a mental map of every potential fall from grace. You began to move, not with the young hunter's hurried escape, but with Eileen's measured, purposeful tread. The crowfeather garb whispered secrets to the stones as you walked, each footfall a soft, deliberate press against the cobbles. Your path was aimless, yet guided by a deep, instinctual pull, the pull of the covenant, which now functioned as a kind of compass in your soul, its needle trembling toward concentrations of sin and despair. You found yourself climbing a rickety, iron ladder bolted to the side of a tenement, the metal groaning in protest under your weight. The ascent took you above the main thoroughfares, onto the steep, tiled roofs that formed a second, hidden city above the first. This was Eileen's domain, the realm of the unseen, and from this vantage, Yharnam was laid bare not as a city of streets, but as a circuit board of tragedy. From the rooftops, the chaos below was muted, transformed into a series of isolated tableaus of violence. In one courtyard, a hunter in the garb of the church executioners was methodically dismembering a small horde of huntsmen, their movements a study in brutal, unthinking efficiency. The spray of blood was a fine, crimson mist in the air, and even from this distance, you could see the set of the hunter's shoulders, the slight, almost imperceptible tilt of the head that suggested not focus, but a kind of rapturous absorption. In another lane, a lone figure with a threaded cane was being overwhelmed, their elegant weapon failing against the sheer numbers of the beast-plagued citizens. Their cries were sharp with panic, a pure, unadulterated fear that was, in its own way, a sign of a soul still clinging to its humanity. You watched, a spectator from the shadows, weighing both scenes with a heavy heart. The first hunter was a subject of interest, a potential candidate for your grim attention. The second was merely a victim. The Covenant demanded you let both scenarios play out. To intervene rashly was to risk misunderstanding the nature of the corruption. The blood drunkenness was a subtle poison, a flower that bloomed in the dark soil of the soul, and you had to be certain of its petals before you plucked it. You settled into a crouch, the rough, granular texture of the clay tiles pressing through your clothes. The wind at this altitude was stronger, carrying with it the myriad scents of the city, the smoky aroma of burning incense from a hidden chapel, the cloying sweetness of the white church flowers that grew in poisonous clusters in the cemeteries, the ever-present metallic breath of the old blood. You became a part of the architecture, a gargoyle with a purpose, your stillness a counterpoint to the frantic motion below. Time lost its meaning, measured only in the rising and falling of distant screams, the periodic, mournful chiming of the unseen bell, and the slow crawl of the fog as it thickened and thinned in spectral tides. This was the vigil. This was the true work of the hunter of hunters, not the violent climax in the tomb or the cathedral, but the long, patient, soul-wearying observation. It was the work of a gardener who must watch each plant, knowing they will eventually have to prune the ones that grow twisted and wild. A change in the atmosphere pulled you from your reverie. It was a shift in the quality of the silence from a particular courtyard, a pocket of sudden, unnatural calm. You focused your gaze, your hunter-sharpened vision piercing the gloom. The hunter with the threaded cane had finally fallen, their body still and broken. But the executioner who had been slaughtering the huntsmen had finished their work. They were not moving on. They were standing amidst the carnage, their massive, blood-drenched axe held loosely in one hand. Their head was thrown back, and though you could not hear it, you could see the convulsive motion of their chest, the shuddering expansion of their ribs. They were not catching their breath, they were inhaling the scene, savoring it. Then a sound did carry, a low, rolling chuckle that was devoid of mirth, a dry, rasping noise like stones grinding together. It was the sound of a mind coming loose from its moorings, the first, unmistakable crack in the dam. This was the moment of transition, of crossing the invisible line. The Covenant stirred within you, a cold, clear certainty that cut through the ambient sorrow of the night. There was no more ambiguity. The hunter had become the subject. The purge was now necessary. You rose from your crouch, your muscles uncoiling with a silent, lethal grace. The descent from the rooftop was a series of fluid, practiced movements, a drop to a lower balcony, a silent landing on a pile of discarded crates, a final, soft step onto the cobblestones of the courtyard. You entered the scene not as a combatant, but as an embodiment of consequence. The executioner heard you or sensed you. The chuckling stopped. They turned, their movements slow, deliberate, their eyes gleaming from within the shadow of their helmet. There was no recognition there, no confusion. There was only a dull, predatory interest. They saw not a fellow hunter, but new prey, a fresh sauce of the intoxicating spray. They hefted the massive axe, the gore dripping from its blade, making dark patterns on the stones. "What's this?" Their voice was a guttural slur, thickened by the ecstasy of the kill. "Another little bird, come to sing for me," you did not answer. Words were pointless now. They were the province of the still sane, tools for communication that this creature had long since discarded. You simply stood, the blade of mercy held ready, your posture not one of challenge, but of finality. You were not here to fight them. You were here to end them. They charged with a sudden, explosive roar, the axe sweeping up in a devastating arc meant to crush you into the ground. It was an attack of pure, unrestrained power, the kind that had likely felled a dozen beasts moments before. But you were not a beast. You were the calm at the eye of the storm. You did not meet the blow. You flowed around it, your body a whisper of motion, the crow-feather cape swirling. The axe head smashed into the ground where you had been standing, sending chips of stone flying. In the space of that missed swing, you were inside their guard. The blade of mercy became a silver blur, not aiming for a killing blow, but for the tendons in their weapon arm, the back of their knee. Precision strikes. Painful, debilitating, designed to halt the frenzy, to force a moment of clarity before the end. The executioner bellowed in pain and surprise, stumbling back. The drunken euphoria in their eyes flickered, replaced by a spark of raw, animal fury. They were being denied their revelry, and the withdrawal was a physical agony. They came at you again, their attacks wilder, more desperate, a tempest of steel and rage. You were the stone in the river, unmoved, your movements a serene, deadly dance of evasion and retaliation. Each time your blades found their mark, it was a punctuation in a silent argument, a reminder of the consequence they had sought to escape. You were making them feel the cost of every life they had taken in their ecstasy, reflecting their own violence back at them with a cold, surgical clarity. The fight could not last. Their strength was waning, their movements becoming clumsy, their breath a ragged, wet sob. The blood drunkenness that had granted them such ferocious power was now their undoing, clouding their judgment, leaving them open. You saw the final opening, a wide, unbalanced swing that left their entire torso exposed. There was no rage in you as you took it, no satisfaction, only a profound, bottomless sorrow. You stepped forward, the twin blades of mercy becoming one in your hands for a single, definitive thrust. It was not a violent impact, but a smooth, penetrating acceptance. The steel slid between their ribs, finding the frantic, corrupted heart within. The executioner stiffened, a great, shuddering gasp escaping their lips. The axe slipped from their grasp, clattering to the ground. The fury in their eyes died, and for a breathtaking second, something else looked out. A glimpse of the person they had been, a hunter who had once believed in the righteousness of the purge. A soul horrified by the monster they had become. It was a moment of terrible, lucid anguish. And then it was gone. Their bodies sagged, their weight pulling them off the blade, and they collapsed onto the bloody stones, joining the very carnage they had created. You stood over them, the silence rushing back in, thicker and heavier than before. The scent of blood was overwhelming, a metallic fog that coated the back of your throat. You looked down at your hands, at the blades, at the new layer of gore that now adorned the crowfeather garb. This was the work. This was the silent mercy. It was not glorious. It was not clean. It was a bloody, heart-breaking necessity performed in forgotten courtyards and on rain-slicked rooftops, witnessed by no one but the fog and the indifferent, starless sky. You performed the gesture, the shake-off cape, but the motion felt hollow, a ritual whose power was fading with each new stain. The blood was not on the cape, it was on you. It was in you. And you knew, with a certainty as cold as the grave, that this was only the first of many such quiet, desperate acts in the long, dark night that was now your life. The hunt was eternal, and so now were you.